What's up everyone, this is Brian from Bull Strength coming at you with another video, and today I'm going to be talking about why I don't use weightlifting straps anymore and why I'm probably not ever going to use weightlifting straps again. So in this video we're going to talk about sort of the background, what led me into exclusively using weightlifting straps, and then we're going to talk about the micro injuries that resulted in bigger injuries that kind of made me want to step back and rethink what I was doing. So back in 2016, I had done my final Raw powerlifting competition. I think it was my 5th or 6th one. It was with Raw United. And from that point on, when I had it in my head that I'm not doing any more powerlifting, I decided to basically forsake my raw grip deadlift, since I'm not competing in raw grip deadlifts anymore, and instead opted to use weightlifting straps on deadlift days exclusively. When it came to deadlifting, I did not do raw deadlifting anymore, and any kind of grip work that I did was a sort of separate accessory group of movements that I would do to focus on that. So I retired from powerlifting, opted to start using weightlifting straps exclusively. But I did intend on competing one more time, at least one more time. I wanted to try a strongman competition. And in strongman, you're allowed to use weightlifting straps. So I basically did all of my training with the trap bar, with the barbell, with weightlifting straps on my wrists. So around the middle of 2019, over the summer, I did the Strength Camp Challenge. It was a really fun competition. But shortly afterwards, I started to notice in my left wrist a bump start to appear. And over time, this bump continued to grow. And from what I had put together after a few months, is that it was a ganglion cyst that was beginning to form. And it was right here, sorry for the computer screen there, is right here on the corner of my wrist. So technically this is where the strap would come off and where I would wrap my wrist. So this right here is a point of very high tension, when I'm doing strap deadlifts. But I already had really bad issues with carpal tunnel syndrome, so I assumed that the wrist cyst was related to that wrist issue and had nothing to do with the weightlifting straps. For whatever reason, that sort of flew over my head. I just didn't even really consider it. And over time, this cyst continued to grow, and it got really big, it got painful, it got hard to play guitar, it got hard to play video games, it got hard to type on the computer. So eventually I went to a doctor and I had the cyst aspirated. So in other words, they took a needle, they lanced it, they squeezed all the gel out, the joint fluid, basically, that had built up in there. It's what a ganglion cyst is. So it was aspirated, went away, and I didn't really think about it, right? I figured, all right, I'm fine. I can play guitar again. I can play games and not have pain. So I continued to use weightlifting straps. Probably not the best idea. So we're fast forwarding from that cyst that was aspirated in 2019 to another ganglion cyst that began to appear on my right wrist. And I thought it was a little odd because the cyst, and you can still kind of see it right here, there's still a little bit left, but this cyst started forming in the exact same spot as the one that had just been aspirated. So it kind of made me think, like, alright, so it's probably not playing guitar, that my left hand is my fret hand, my right hand is just doing picking, and I play mostly rhythm type stuff, so it wouldn't make sense for it to be the guitar. At least that's kind of what I had figured out. And at this point I was starting to kind of think, like, maybe it is the weightlifting straps, because they're painful to use. If you use weightlifting straps for really heavy weight, it can be really painful on your wrist. So once again, this cyst got huge after a few months or so, and it needed to be aspirated again. This time I did it on my own. I would not recommend doing that, okay? I had no issues with it because I was super cautious. I paid close attention to how the doctor did it the first time anyway, And I basically just replicated, you know, his disinfectant procedure and using a sterile syringe and everything. And I ended up having no issues with it. The reason why I say not to do it on your own is that technically if you lance a ganglion cyst on your own, it can become infected. And if you end up with an infection in your wrist, it is very, very hard to deal with. So very risky move on my part. I just decided to do it, and I ended up okay. But the alternative is, you know, they say with a ganglion cyst to take a Bible or a medical textbook or something really heavy and to smash it as hard as you can. But anyway, so I lanced the growth. I squeezed out all the gel just like the doctor had done. And I continued to have high amounts of pain and numbness in my hands, especially at night, which this is not completely uncommon. You know, having carpal tunnel syndrome. The thing that was weird was that I wasn't doing any fine finger activity. I had taken a deliberate break from it. I stopped playing guitar, I stopped playing video games, and I was only weightlifting. So the fact that my wrists were still in extreme pain at night, you know, now I only have one variable left, the weights. On top of taking a break from guitar playing and from playing video games, I was icing it daily, several times a day. I would do Epsom salt soaks with hot water. I was taking omega-3, magnesium, turmeric, CBD, a little ibuprofen, pretty much every over-the-counter anti-inflammatory that you can imagine. And it definitely helped the symptoms. But I realized that there was something wrong. That, like, I could not be completely reliant on anti-inflammatories. So my next deadlift workout, it was a heavy rack pull that I was doing in the power rack, and although it didn't cause any immediate pain to my wrist, my carpal tunnel pain was a 10 out of 10 that night. Okay, and like I said, this was while I was taking a break from all the fine finger stuff, and now I had just done a rack pull, and now my hands are killing me all night. I woke up several times in the middle of the night from the pain, from excruciating pain, from numbness that I couldn't shake out. I just couldn't run enough water on my hands. Like, there was just no feeling, and it was really painful. So the next day I realized, the lifting straps were the one variable that I had not actually tested yet. It's the one thing that I had not cut out, which in retrospect is stupid. I'm having a lot of wrist pain, and, you know, there's these freaking straps on my wrist with 500-600 pounds hanging off of them. So should have been obvious, however it was not. The reason why it wasn't that obvious is, you know, I had been using them for years without any incident, no noticeable issues, and, you know, I'd heard a lot of anecdotal stuff from people online about, you know, having wrist pain from strapping and doing deadlifts. But, you know, you go to any random bodybuilding or T-Nation forum and everyone's just basically saying suck it up. Obviously, this is not a legitimate medical opinion or anything like that, but it just seemed to be very consistent in the anecdotal evidence that it's not actually the culprit of anything like a ganglion cyst or something like that. So, very reluctantly, I decided to stop using wrist straps altogether. I figured, you know, this is the last variable I have to test, so going back to doing a raw grip deadlift is at least worth a shot. My thinking was, you know, maybe my grip strength is a lot weaker than I thought. You know, maybe the wrist straps themselves are causing extra physical damage to my wrists. Maybe a combination of both. I mean, I had definitely noticed a little atrophy in my forearms. My forearms were a little bit smaller. And just for the hell of it, during this time period, I decided to do some isolation training on my grip. And I realized that my grip was way below what it had been. My Reeves deadlift was down. My plate pinch, I couldn't even plate pinch 225s, 225-pound plates together anymore. I was back to using 310s. So I immediately stopped using straps for the next month, and I switched to doing only raw grip deadlifts exclusively. And basically my mindset going into it was, if I can't lift the weight with my raw hands, then I can't lift the weight. It's too heavy, don't mess with it. My first deadlift workout was 5 sets of 5 with 305 on the trap bar, which is well below what I was working with my strapped trap bar deadlift. I just worked up to a weight that was comfortable. So I did my 5x5, which is, you know, total volume wise, that's quite a bit of total volume for 300 pounds. But nothing too crazy. I just wanted enough to give myself a solid workout and then, you know, see how my hands and my wrists feel the next night. Well, when I woke up the next morning, there was no pain, no numbness, nothing in my wrists. My hands and wrists had actually felt healthier than they had felt in a long time. So at that point, I had realized it was the strap deadlifts that was causing damage to my wrists. And after a solid month of only doing raw grip deadlifts, I knew the answer 100%. The straps had caused direct damage to my wrist and were the sole culprit of my chronic pain. Now, I do have carpal tunnel syndrome, which could have been a contributing factor, but at this point, there was no doubt that the weightlifting straps themselves were also causing damage. So not only were the weightlifting straps causing a ton of pain and numbness, they were, I believe, directly responsible for the formation of the ganglion cysts. Now, I'm going to have to explain myself here because there is no actual medical or scientific evidence saying that weightlifting straps can cause ganglion cysts, because technically, if you look at a medical definition of a ganglion cyst, it'll say that scientists still do not know the actual cause of it. I'm just saying that the evidence that I'm about to present is a little bit overwhelming. Once I had figured out definitively that the weightlifting straps were causing damage, I looked online for answers. I went to Reddit, I went to a lot of different forums, and nothing but really vague type stuff. Very anecdotal, low upvote kind of posts. But nothing definitive, and nothing really matching the exact same thing that I had experienced. And also, one thing that I did kind of note from sort of the anecdotal reading through forums and whatnot is that, I mean, wrist and hand numbness is actually really common with using weightlifting straps. And like I said, most of those forums, you know, the people replying are just like, you know, suck it up, it's normal, you know, everyone has this, it's not a big deal. But, you know, as I'm describing here, I personally believe that they are a big deal. At least for me. I don't think they're worth it. I'm too old to even think about competing again anyway. That's why back in 2016 I stopped powerlifting. I'm 38 years old. I don't really have any more, not really will to compete, but I don't really think I have much ability to compete at my older age. Now, it's very much known, everyone is going to agree with this statement right here. Weightlifting straps are a crutch. A very appetizing crutch, because as soon as you put weightlifting straps on, you're capable of deadlifting more weight. That's going to trigger some major dopamine hits, especially if you're into strength progression and things like that, and you just magically start seeing these higher numbers. So they're a very appetizing crutch. A crutch that allowed me personally to easily pull 100 pounds over my raw grip number. And of course, as someone who's not competing in powerlifting anymore, you know, why not just lift heavier weight with straps? Just seemed like a very logical conclusion to me. And now that I think about it, crutches are kind of the wrong word to describe weightlifting straps. Crutches are used to help you move around and don't really cause you any additional pain. I've used crutches before, and you know, if you catch yourself sagging a bunch, you'll end up with some painful armpits. But generally, crutches are meant to help you, not hurt you. A weightlifting strap is not a harmless little crutch. It's actually a lot more similar to a noose than a crutch. So it's basically a noose that causes your wrist to constrict with a similar intensity to how it would feel if you were hanging from your neck. You are literally hanging weights off of your wrist. And I know you're supposed to squeeze with all your might, but I'm telling you that with years and years of training and without focusing at all on raw deadlifts and only using straps, you're going to lose grip strength, which means your hands, even though they're squeezing, they're doing less and less. And over time, the strap is taking over more and more. So when you think about it, when I was deadlifting 675 pounds, that was 675 pounds hanging off of my wrists. Not that my hands weren't doing any gripping at all, but a lot of that weight was just hanging off of my wrist. And at least to say, the human body is just not designed for that. We are not anatomically built to have hundreds of pounds just hanging off of our wrists with nooses. I mean, not only are the straps themselves constricting all of those little carpal bones in there, but it's also squeezing all of those surrounding ligaments, right? So they say joint damage in your wrist is what causes a ganglion cyst, right? Now I know, like I said, there is no evidence directly tying a using weightlifting straps to the formation of ganglion cysts, but I insist. Why the fuck did I say that? I insist that it was the culprit. It's the reason why I ended up growing cysts. So not only are these straps causing direct damage to your carpal bones and ligaments, but the lack of contraction out of your forearms and hands, right? Everything's not as tight. You just don't have as much protection in there as well, right? You know, anytime you do a lift, you're supposed to be contracting and squeezing, and that's helping to protect all your tendons and ligaments, right? Same concept as bracing your core, breathing into your core, building intra-abdominal pressure to protect your spine. It's kind of the same concept with squeezing your wrist. Well, if you're not getting enough squeezing, then you're also not getting enough protection. And of course, this lack of protection is going to leave your ligaments and bones very vulnerable. Over time, this will cause damage. There's no way to avoid it. There's absolutely no way to avoid it. You're going to feel pain in the short term, and in the long term, you're most likely going to end up with some issues. So what about these ganglion cysts forming over time? Well, like I said, there's no official reason, there's no scientific explanation for why ganglion cysts grow in your wrist in the first place. But the leading theory among scientists is that they occur as a result of joint injury, right? So most people that get a ganglion cyst, it'll be, they got whacked while playing tennis, or they got hit by a hockey puck or a baseball or some kind of direct injury, and then this cyst started forming basically where the injury occurred. The joint was damaged directly, you had some fluid leak out, which basically ended up hardening, and over time it continues to grow until you either smash it or aspirate it or whatever. So we're going to look at this quote over here from the Cleveland Clinic. So currently most researchers agree that ganglion cysts develop as a result of continuous micro injury. What's actually happening when you're pulling heavy deadlifts and you're feeling this pain and numbness, what do you think that is? Those are micro injuries. Every time that you're doing deadlifting with straps and you're feeling that tingling, you are causing micro injuries. Obviously, you can tolerate probably years of these micro injuries before they start growing cysts and things like that. You start noticing more chronic problems. You can get away with it for a long time. I wouldn't say that the wrist straps were 100% responsible for my wrist pain and resulting cyst growth. Like I said, I have carpal tunnel syndrome. I have other stuff going on with my wrist that could have resulted, or could have compounded together and added to the micro injuries that were being created from deadlifting with straps. However, I would say that it is most certainly, or was most certainly, a major contributing factor to why I was ending up with all this pain and cyst growth. But here's another thing to note. Since I've been only doing raw grip deadlifts, the activities that used to affect my carpal tunnels no longer affect me. I used to play guitar, like I said, I would play for an hour to 4 hours at a time. And a lot of times I'd end up having to take breaks after, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Maybe sometimes I'd play through one song and my hand would start cramping up. Now, since I've switched back to raw grip deadlifts and have cut out straps, I don't have any more pain from playing guitar. And I'm not waking up in the middle of the night. Sometimes I would have those episodes of extreme pain and numbness in the middle of the night from just playing guitar. I wouldn't even need to do any weightlifting. I think that there was just so much damage in my wrist that, activating all those damaged tissues for however many hours a day was causing more damage. So I'm not really feeling any more flare-ups in the carpal tunnel, which is awesome. So, in conclusion, I will never use weightlifting straps ever again. I don't plan on doing any more competitions as I approach 40 years old. So there's really no need to be using crutches or nooses to, basically be able to do overloading and, get competitive. There's really no point in it. So as far as grip assistance going forward, I'm only going to be using chalk. Of course, I lift weights at home, so I don't have any rules in my gym. But yeah, I'm only going to be using chalk for grip assistance. Never am I going to hang a barbell or a trap bar off of my wrists ever again. So thanks for watching this video. Please check out the links below if you'd like to support this channel, or if you're interested in being coached personally by me. There's links in the description for that. Have a great rest of your day or night, and peace out.